If you've been on any sort of media platform, social media platform, news platform, you know that labor, cost, inflation are key things that people are talking about right now. And we're currently in a state like we've never seen before where there's so much competition when it comes to labor, and so much competition when it comes to hiring. And more importantly, businesses are focused now more than ever on managing their costs. So on this week's episode, we're going to talk about the importance of automation when it comes to your business and how you can leverage automation to help improve your business profitability. Stay tuned. Welcome to another episode of Stuff Your Bookkeeper Isn't Telling You. I am Lola Turner, your host, and today I am joined by Mr. Terrell Antonio Turner, my co-host. Hello, Terrell.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I am doing well,
Good. Did that take like some convincing? You a little bit tired?
I am tired. I mean, at the time we're recording this, it's like 10, and like for the past
Almost
couple
10
days,
p.m.
I've been like, yeah, it's like 10 p.m. For the past couple days, I've been up to like 2 a.m. working on some stuff, fixing some cleanup stuff for some clients, and um, working on some awesome. Well, I was working on some awesome marketing strategy stuff that stopped today. So all is well.
Awesome. I'm glad you're doing good. I'm excited to jump into today's episode. And it's late. And so, we're here for our audience. So, super excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today. I think automation is probably a word where when a lot of people hear it, it's almost like, I mean, I used to be this way before I actually got involved in automation projects. I used to think like, the whole, like you said, the whole rise of the machines, the Arnold Schwartz, I can't pronounce his last name, Schwarzenegger, the rise of the machines and just like humans being like taken over and everybody losing their jobs. Like, I think that is what a lot of people think about when they think about automation, but I'm just really excited to talk about what it really is and the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think a lot of people do when they hear about, automation, and then they start hearing about things like, robotics, and they really do get that image of the Terminator, of when
Mhm.
Skynet went online and the machines started fighting against the humans, and it
I
just
do
becomes
remember
like
that.
this adversarial kind of relationship that I think a lot of people originally think about when it comes down to automation. Or even I saw this post on Facebook, which I had to laugh when I saw it, because it was about like this guy was shopping at Walmart, where in the Walmart he was in, I guess they put in all self-checkout lines. And so you go through the self-checkout line, and then before you leave, they asked to check your, like, there was a lady that was asking to check people's receipts, and he was like, the line was backing up. So he just, after he, rung all the stuff up, he paid for it, and he just walked out. And the lady asked, like, hey, I need to see your receipt. He was like, y'all need to make up your mind. Either this is going to be self-checkout automated, or you need to bring the people back to the register.
I guess they still want to make sure people aren't stealing, but I'm like, even at Walmart, don't they have like those cameras that like monitor you? I guess they're not like super responsive where they're like being like, oh, you have only 8 of your 9 items scanned, like send a message to the back office and have them come check it. So I guess automation isn't really fully automation. Honestly, at the end of the day, it kind of reminds me of like the Matrix, because in the Matrix weren't like the machines like running things. It was like Matrix 2 or 3. I don't remember now. It's been a
Well, it
while.
depends. It depends on which Matrix you saw. Now, if you
The
saw
Matrix
the
where
first,
they went
like the
to the
first, the
city.
first
The
trilogy.
city. Yeah.
Okay, so let me say this: if you saw the first like trilogy set, you may have an opinion. But then if you saw the last one they came out with, which was absolutely trash,
Yeah, the
where
last one
they
doesn't
tried to
count.
like they in many cases they rewrote the entire logic of the movie to where I'm like, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question because
Yeah,
had we
immediately
never seen
no.
that last one?
Immediately no. The last Matrix isn't even acknowledged because honestly, my opinion, that movie was so much crap. It just undid the whole of like Matrix 1 through 3. So no, I'm talking about the trilogy.
Okay, so you're talking about the first set. So yeah, I mean, I think in that one, there was like, I guess it was a bit strange if I'm remembering correctly, because I mean, the movie came out years ago.
Yeah.
But if I'm remembering correctly, I think the machines operated in like Machine City, and then
Mhm.
there was the code inside the Matrix that
Right.
was trying to get out, and I think that was going to cause an issue with the machine land or whatever. And I think that's why the machines ended up teaming up with Neo to stop that from happening. But I think in that situation, you had another scenario of machines versus the people. And
Exactly.
and I think you never really got to see, what could things look like if these two parties worked well together.
I saw there's like so many horror stories. I just thought about this when you were talking. I Robot, the one with Will Smith. That was another one where the machines were taking over. You remember that movie? I was like, yeah, that was another one where it started out like with collaboration and like, like the machines are here to save you and help you and they're partners. And then all along, the main machine was planning to take over. So I can definitely see why some people have like their apprehensions when it comes to automation. But believe you me, that's not the kind of automation we're talking about today. So
Yeah.
um go
And I
ahead.
think also that, with the advancement in technology, because I think a lot of times when people start thinking about like, robotics and technology coming in play, is sometimes they're thinking about, I guess I would call it like, they're thinking about like 1990s or early 2000s robotics. They're not
Hmm.
necessarily thinking about it now with the quantum computing, the AI technology. Like, for example, a lot of us are actually interacting with some of the benefits of like that robotic technology and AI. Like when you go to Netflix and I mean, because if you think about it, is what Netflix, Amazon does it as well, is when you go on to Netflix, it's almost like the entire library has been rearranged to fit your preferences.
Hmm.
And I mean, when you think about it in an old school way, is if you went to, let's say, the old school
The
Blockbuster,
blockbuster.
Blockbuster was not going to change its layout for you, the individual customer. You had to
Right.
come in there and you had to, take what they gave you. But it's just like now with some of the computing technology and, the AI, what Amazon and what Netflix is able to do is it's almost like they're rearranging the entire store. So when you come in, it looks like the store was made for you. And I think that, as that advance, some of that technology is also now becoming a huge benefit for, businesses, especially in the area of accounting and finance.
Right. And I think oftentimes when it comes to automation, there are benefits because actually, as you're talking about how we already interact with AI and some sort of technology, robotic technology or automation every day. I was just thinking about like how often I use my "Hey Google" like voice, where I'm like, "Hey Google, add this to my grocery list," and I do that a lot. Like, "Hey Google, what is this, this, and this?" So like it's almost become a part of our lives that we honestly don't realize like how much we it already exists today. And so why not leverage it to help drive your business forward? And it might sound like overly complex in some cases, but really some of the stuff we're going to talk about today are really just simple tweaks and adjustments that we've made in the business and great resources and tools that we've used.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, it does get, depending on how deep a person wants to go into it. Like there are some things that get very deeply complex. Like I have some
Yeah.
friends that are, that, they're engineers deep into the details of
Yeah.
robotics and
Yep.
analytics. I have some other friends that aren't as deeply technical as an engineer, but they're still very knowledgeable and explaining great things. Like, shout out to my friend Chris Ortega. Him and I, we did a speech together at the AICPA Engage event in Las Vegas, and in one of his sessions that he did, where he talked about kind of where that advancement in technology, AI, like as you mentioned about, like, saying like, hey Google, it's like,
Hmm.
some of the things that are being worked on to where you could even, say, hey Google, what were the sales trends for the last 3 months? It's like,
Mm.
imagine, if your CEO could pull out their phone and say that and get the answer, to where they used to have to come to the CFO, or they used to have to
Replaced
come to
immediately.
the accountant.
Immediately replaced. Somebody needs to make sure the machine is calculating the right numbers. Okay. Um, no, but that's yeah, that's a really good insight. I will say, I think one of the things, to your point, I do think it can really, depending on the scale of your operation, it can definitely get complex. One of the projects that I'm currently supporting is a $2 million automation project.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's a lot of money that's put into that. And a lot of times when you have like especially if you have like manufacturing companies, or if you have like a bottling company, whatever it is, like a lot of times those are huge operational scales, because you're having to change basically how you're running the entire operation. Um, and those do take time, and you have to really think through how to change that and how it's going to work into how you do business.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that is a very common trend that we probably saw, since both of us, worked a decent amount of time in industrial manufacturing. You're still
Mhm.
doing some of it, me not as much. But when it came down to industrial manufacturing, I think industrial manufacturing was one of those areas where robots did start to get adopted a little faster, because I
Yeah.
remember being on the shop floors where robots are picking up, jet engines, or they're picking up diesel engines for 18 wheelers and stuff like that, to where,
Mhm.
you could get a human being to do that, but you would just need so much equipment to do it. And one of the things that we started getting into, when you started wanting to do things at a fine, more precision level, like, when you start really manufacturing things down to like, I guess you say the nanite level, like you can't do it by hand. And just with trying to scale, I think it really taught you something, looking at the industrial side, how they adopted robots. And now, being on the other side of like accounting, finance, some of your business practices, I'm like, there's a lot that we can learn from the way that industrial manufacturing adopted robots and robotics, and how we can do a similar thing to make, accounting, finance, and more business administration more efficient and effective.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of benefits that come with automation. I think if I'm just thinking about like from a business owner's perspective, and I've seen this, like we've seen this in the industrial manufacturing space. And this is usually what most people go to, like immediately they think about when they think about automation, is cost savings, right? So I think that's kind of sometimes like a no-brainer, right? You have an initial investment, of course, that goes into setting it up, but the goal is, hey, eventually this is supposed to save us money in some cases. The second thing is, I'd say for me, which I think is an important one, is the firm's ability to use the resources, automation resources, to help grow and scale their business. I think we have, as the labor market contracts, or as it becomes more challenging for you to find really good talent, because there's a lot of companies that are hiring, how do you as a small company stand out, right? And it's challenging sometimes if you're a $5 to $6 million company. revenue company and you're trying to hire someone who is offering, you have another company that makes $1 billion a year and they're offering $150,000 and you're trying to offer $70,000 in annual salary. So sometimes it does become a little bit challenging and you're probably not at the top of the list in terms of being selected or the number one option. But I think automation is a good way for you to, in cases like that, like leverage your existing workforce to help grow and be able to support more clients and
Yeah.
increase your revenue.
And I guess before we go too much further down, like, because it sounded like you were naming a list of like different benefits. Before we go too far, I wanted to go back to that first point you said. I mean, because I do think that's something that a lot of people don't think about is, they think about the benefits of, hey, what automation will do, but sometimes they seem to be caught off guard that, hey, there may be a upfront investment, whether that's
Oh yeah.
time or whether that's money.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's just like some people that I've talked to have thought all about, oh, what's the benefits of it? And they kind of, you know, they half step, or they kind of, partially work on the upfront investment, whether that's investing the time to make sure the implementation goes well, or making sure you hire the right partners, or investing in the right systems, where it's like they're looking for all the benefits and they want, I guess you could say, they want the benefits on a budget. And when you try to cut corners on that upfront investment, that's where I've seen a lot of people have a bad experience, where they come back and say, well, this automation doesn't work. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
that's because you got a little cheap on the front end.
Yeah, and I think that's why you also need a finance person, right? Like your bookkeeper, if your business is you're looking to grow your business or you're looking to implement or do automation, like pretty much my job on this project that's actively going through is I need to validate, like you're telling me it's going to save XYZ. I need to understand the cost. How much is it going to cost you? Because no, I mean, just like you would do any analysis, like you need to understand the benefits and the cost of doing it. So I think part of having a bookkeeper or a finance or an accounting person is they should be able to help you do that analysis to say, hey, if you're looking to invest in this automation solution, like how much is it going to cost? Like you said, I think a lot of times people don't think through the non-monetary cost as well. Like you said, the time, like the time that it's going to take to learn the processes and different things like that, and compare that against the benefit that you would get. Because then that tells you what's the true benefit of making this decision. Because if you look at one versus the other, then you're going to end up in a position where you said, like, you're delayed, it's derailed. Then you come back and you're like, this product didn't even work. And I've seen a lot of people fall into that situation. And it's because they weren't looking at the whole picture. And sometimes I've seen situations where you have someone on the engineering team come and provide a solution. No one on the finance side vetted it. You didn't have anyone on the finance side to confirm and validate it. And now you've spent, millions of dollars on a project that isn't yielding what it was supposed to. So
Yeah,
I think that's important.
absolutely. I mean, and as you were saying that, it made me think about something it became a huge annoyance factor for me whenever it came down to running a business case and we were looking at a decision, and the only benefit people wanted to focus on was the opportunity cost. They would say things like, oh, this will free our people up for 8 hours or 16 hours, or hey, this will free up 2 days worth of time. And it's like, while that may be true, the real question of the benefit is not necessarily just, does this free people's time up? The question I would ask is, okay, if we free up this 8 hours, we
What are
free
they
up
gonna
these 2 days, what else are they going to be doing?
do?
Because we
Right,
still have to pay
exactly.
them. Are they just going to be
Exactly.
sitting around doing nothing? Like, do you have something better else for them to do? Because if we're gonna say that, hey, saving time is the benefit, then I think, to the point you were making earlier, one of the things I was always ask people is, if they're not doing this, is there something else they can do that could help the organization continue to grow faster, or to
Mhm.
add more value, or to be
Mhm.
more productive? because I'm like, if we have something else to shift their attention and their time to, I'm like, then that makes more sense. Like this becomes a easier business case to sell.
Right. No, I fully agree. And I think opportunity cost is one of those things where it's so subjective sometimes because, people are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna save, this solution is gonna save you 5 hours. And I'm like, okay, and then what am I doing those 5 hours a day? Like, am I actually being productive and am I being effective? So that's a very valid point.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things that I do think, like, for all bookkeepers and accountants, if you're doing advisory work, as you're kind of working with different business owners and you're working with different clients, I mean, I do think that that's the one of the thing that I think as finance professionals, we have to challenge that assumption
Hmm.
because it's very easy for us to convince ourselves that there's a benefit and hey, making this decision is worth it. And not to say that, hey, robotics and automation isn't worth it. I think it is worth it. It's just,
Yeah.
you just got to make sure that as you're automating things that you're freeing up time. It's just like, now what are you going to do with that time you freed up? Like, and I love the point you brought up about the people, because that's one of those challenging conversations that I had to sit in when we were automating some things at different companies. It's like,
Hmm.
hey, when we automate this, do understand we are taking task and responsibility away from a person who's doing it. Their
Yep.
first thought in their mind is, oh man, I'm going to get fired. Like they're going to
Right.
lay me off because they don't need me anymore. So I'm like, as leaders, we got to kind of be responsible enough to say, okay, all right, what else can this person do now that they're no longer doing that task? And then
Yeah.
what can I start to do now to help them get prepared to do this new thing?
Yeah, one thing I will say automation definitely forces you to do is it forces you to examine how you're spending your time, like on a
Yeah.
specific process, because in order for you to get your finance person to properly evaluate how much time is actually being saved or the cost, you need to understand what does it currently take you to do whatever it is that you're doing today. With this new automation process, how long will it take you to do tomorrow? And then from then really understanding, okay, what's the benefit and what's the savings? So sometimes it's, as a business owner, it's also a good opportunity for you to kind of take task of like what it is that you currently do today and understand like, all right, have I, like, what am I truly spending my time on? I think that's really the big thing.
Yeah. And I'm curious for you. I mean, as you're kind of working through the project that you mentioned and even previous projects, um, do you feel like people were ready to have or first, do you feel like people actually understood what they were spending their time on when you asked that question?
No, I mean, I would say it's 50-50, right? I think this project was a little bit different because the individuals that we were, I guess, that would be quote unquote impacted from the adjustment are people that are temporary labor. So they're not full time employees, which I think was a great strategy because then it avoids like some of the awkward conversations, like you said, where it's like, hey, so what is it that you do all day around here? Because really, like with temps and temporary labor, like these are contractors that you hire. They know they're there for specific tasks. Like they know that their contract isn't long term. So it's much easier to have the conversation. So I think it was relatively straightforward, like with those people, because they had been there maybe less than a year or whatever. I don't know what the duration was. So typically when you have someone that, we used to say when in corporate, like I said, we used to say in corporate, one of the things that they say, like when somebody starts at a new company is like, give all your feedback now. Tell us everything that's wrong with the process now when you're still fresh, because you can see things kind of from the outside looking in. I feel like contractors have the ability to do that because they're not part of the company. They're not part of the culture. They're not like inundated in things. So it was easy, I guess, for you to get that feedback of what they were spending their time on. But then realizing also that, hey, there may be some learned behaviors for people that have been there longer that the temp employees that you're trying to get feedback on how they do the processes don't have. So that was something else that needed to kind of be taken into account.
Yeah. Now, I guess I'm curious also when you approach that conversation, have you found maybe that's kind of leading the witness?
You are
So
leading me.
let me ask a more open-ended question: Is do you feel like people that are not contractors, like full-time employees, do you feel like they are a little apprehensive about being honest about what they spend their time on when they know that, hey, a automation project is on underway?
I will say in this situation, I haven't had enough of a like enough experience working talking to like the permanent employees to actually get that feedback. But I will say, and I'm working on some other projects now with some of the guys that I support. And one of the things that is as you start to think about, when people come in and like, okay, we need to think about how we improve our efficiency. Like a lot of companies are thinking, how do we become more productive? Like that's something that's come up because then we're like, okay, in order to become more productive, we need to know how people are spending their time today. And I've seen there has been a lot of apprehension to that because it goes back to the fact that, hey, if I have to really tell people what I spend my time on and it doesn't meet the criteria or it sounds like I'm not really doing a lot, then my job is at risk, right? So I to answer your question, I haven't really seen it specifically on this project, but I have seen it overall just when it comes to productivity improvement um at some on some of the projects I've worked on.
Yeah. Because, it's one of those things. I think even for myself, when it comes down to that, it's just me having me having to sit back and see what am I spending my time on. Like, I'm gonna be very transparent. You and I had a conversation recently and was talking about, hey, the stuff that needed to get done. And you asked me the question, like, well, what are you spending your time on? Immediately, I was just like, okay, if I as I was going down the list, I'm just like, okay, all right, Terrell, that list isn't that long. Why aren't you able to get some of this stuff that you need to get done? And I think once I started actually listing it out, I realized, hey, you're spending some time on stuff that you don't need to be doing anyway.
Mhm.
And you're spending some time on some stuff that probably could get automated. And you're spending some time on some stuff that probably should be handed off to someone else. But I think whenever like really looking at, hey, how am I spending my time, or
Mhm.
really just going back and documenting the process, I think, which is the starting point to any automation or any successful automation, I do think we tend to find that there's some stuff that we're doing that isn't really adding value to the end result, and those
Mhm.
are things that we can stop doing, or we probably should stop doing. And sometimes I do think that ego of, I don't want people to find out that I'm, for lack of a better term, wasting time. I
Right.
don't want people to know that I'm wasting time. So I do think that from my experience, when it came down to some automation projects, I've seen some people be a little hesitant to
Yep.
be transparent about, like, hey, what are you doing? Because we can create a tool that can kind of replace some of these steps. Now, one of the things that I'm finding to be very interesting about, kind of what's happening in the accounting industry, as I mentioned earlier, like we saw it happen in industrial manufacturing with,
Mhm.
the way they use robotics and technology has come into play is, you're starting to see it happen a lot more. Like there was the article that came out recently about Canopy, which creates technology that a lot of different accounting firms are using that technology. But the not so much, I don't want to focus so much on like, hey, here's what they're doing. Just one of the things that they talked about releasing a new feature of trying to help automate the workflow process, because I think that is probably a huge headache for anybody who's working with multiple people.
Mhm.
Is how in the world do you keep, this project moving forward when different people have to put their hands in on this project? And so, one of the things that I'm curious about from your perspective, like you talked about the automation projects that you guys are trying to work on, like what has that been like, with so many people having to do their piece of the process? Like, how have you guys managed, keeping the project moving forward?
I think we've honestly taken a more traditional approach. I don't know if this would have been the approach if we were like at a startup where there were only 6 people, because there's just no bandwidth to do it. But the approach that's been taken, at least on this project, has been like meetings twice a week. So it's an Excel spreadsheet that's being tracked. You have actions. Hey, these are the 30, 50 things we need to do to get to wherever it is we need to go. This is the person that's going to own that. And then when we get on those calls twice a week, basically each person provides an update on what they're working on. If for whatever reason whoever owns that doesn't come to the call, then you need to chase that person down, or the project manager needs to chase that person down, find out what's going on with the project. So I think ideally this is probably a key opportunity for automation within an automation project, to where there's so many tools, like monday.com and so many other tools where like you can create a project and people can go in and provide their updates, in real time. And so, like, if someone doesn't show up to the meeting, you can put in your notes and your updates, and then you can have the conversation about them, without that person present, versus coming to the meeting twice a week to report. It's like, it's not exactly the most efficient way, but that's how it's being done today.
Yeah. And I mean, and that just reminds me of like when working at bigger companies, um, that was kind of how we approached it. I mean, we took that, I call it I mean, I think it's a bad way to approach things. It's a very old school way of problem comes up, you just throw people at it. Like, hey, we're just
Yeah.
gonna, we're gonna hire this person. This person's gonna be the new project manager. Like whatever job they were doing before, now they're gonna be the new project manager or they're gonna be the project champion. They come up with all
Hmm.
these, in my opinion, stupid names. um,
Oh my
to make
gosh.
it feel special, to make it seem special, to where, I mean, because really what you were doing is you now just promoted this person to be you are the designated person that's going to manage the Excel workbook
Babysit.
to make
You're gonna
sure
babysit.
everybody is doing their job.
I mean, it's basically babysitting. You're gonna babysit to make sure everybody's doing their job. And you have people come to those calls. Everybody has an attitude because they're like, "This is a waste of my time. I don't know. I have to sit in this call to give you an update for 2 minutes. Like, it doesn't make sense." So, that is a perfect opportunity to automate something right there. Your process.
Absolutely, and it's refreshing. I will say is now I'll be honest. I haven't. We don't use Canopy's product. I haven't used it. I can't give a testament to, hey, Canopy's product is great. I don't know that because I haven't used it. But what was refreshing to see is that more technologies in the accounting, finance industry in that space are looking to do things because they recognize this is a problem,
Right.
because I do think we're moving out of that phase, especially for a lot of bookkeepers, and we're navigating that ourselves. Of
Yeah.
just as you start to scale, like it's not necessarily like, hey, I'm gonna hire this person and this person owns these 15 clients from start to finish. Like there may be some collaboration with other people on the team, and I do think you got to have some steps in there. Something that is working in the background to signal the next person when they need to pick up the task, because you know unless you are fortunate to say, hey, our business has one client and it is big
Hmm.
enough to cover all of our expenses, to generate profit for the business. Now that's not a particularly healthy business because you have one single point of failure, but most of us don't have the luxury of that. I mean, you're doing like 100 different things all at once, and
Hmm.
some of the stuff you're doing, you need the next person to pick up the ball, and I think having some type of automated workflow definitely helps in a tremendous way.
I agree. No, I agree. I think and the great thing about, I think the great thing about automation as well is you can use it across the board, right? Any part of your business, anything that you're doing. We use it a lot, I guess, within our business. I can think of some key areas where it's become like really important for us. Even if I think about some of the corporate jobs that I've worked, like automation has been essential because I mean, you probably know this. Accounting, in my opinion, has been one of the slower industries to automate. Um, and yeah, you have QuickBooks, yeah, you have Zero, and I'm not gonna like pick favorites, but I mean, within some of those, it's like extremely clunky. It's hard to use, and so sometimes it's just it's taken a while. Like there's constant updates, there's constant improvements, and so I think accounting is probably one of those industries that it's taken us a little bit to get there. And you can still see with some of the technology how it's built is that it takes some time to get and extract the data that really should just take you seconds to pull. So when you find a tool that's doing that, it's like this is like a gem. And you know how they talk about like a diamond in a rough, to where you're like, I'm never going to let go of this tool ever, because it's providing a value that like not a lot of that doesn't really exist today, especially in the accounting space. And if you're listening to this and you're like a business owner, you're like, I don't understand, trust me, these tools help your bookkeeper and your accountant do their job better, right? So I think the accounting space has some work to do, but I'm definitely seeing the automation happening, and I think that's gonna help bookkeepers be able to support the business owners that they support quicker and better.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree because I do think that with the automation, I mean, it one is it allows you to stop doing the stuff that you don't like doing. It
Hmm.
allows you to stop doing some of that boring, repetitive stuff if you can automate it. Because I will say, is some of the stuff that we spend time doing, I talk to accountants and bookkeepers all the time, and they're like, I hate doing this or I hate doing this. Like, I
Hmm.
think that is a great opportunity to look at how do we automate that.
Right.
And I do think as you kind of scale, I mean, the reality of it is like we went through it ourselves where we started when we just had 6 clients. Our
Hmm.
systems, our processes worked. I could pick up the phone, I can answer every single call, I can respond to every single person, and we started growing past that, and we continue growing. And then I would say probably around 12 clients, I started noticing there are some really big cracks in our system. um,
Hmm.
because I don't have the
Hmm.
luxury to manually do things the way that I was doing it before when we only had 6 clients.
Right.
And as we continue to grow, and it's one of those things that I took a step back and said, like, all right, what are we doing? Like I said, writing out the process. What are we doing? Where are we spending our time? And then, hey, where can we find a tool to actually do some of these things that we're doing manually?
Right.
Because we can't continue to grow if we keep doing it manually.
Right. I agree. And I mean, I think some of those tough conversations we had to have when like stuff was getting missed, or we had to have tough conversation about like, yeah, why didn't you do this? I forgot like it needed to be done, or I was, it's such a manual process. I did 9 of them. I didn't do the other 3. So I mean, I think it's just automation helps solve some of those problems. Automation, having a first of all understanding like what is it exactly, what's your responsibility, what do you have to get done is key. I think about it for our invoicing, and I think we've talked about this with like some of our some of the episodes we've done. Like that's one thing we had to work on automating, or at least developing automating the ones that we could, and that has saved a lot of time. It's minimized errors. I mean, it's just made it very clear. Some clients have it's improved our cash flow because some clients auto pay. So it's it's a great way, like I said, to get paid quicker. I mean, it's just there's various benefits, but that's just kind of the one I can think of. Like the billing one has been one we've automated.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good process because I was talking to a business owner yesterday, and one of the things they were telling me is like, I asked them, "Hey, what does your billing process look like?" And they were like, "Well, to be honest with you, Terrell, my billing process isn't, I'm not doing it consistently." And unfortunately, there's some, they were doing some work with some organizations where they have to actually send the bill within a certain time, that if they don't send the bill within, let's say, you know, 6, 7 months, then that organization isn't going to pay the bill. And so
That
I'm
already
just
sounds like a
like,
bad idea.
now you're like losing money because
Right.
this is a manual process that you don't have time to do. And I'm just like, yeah, automation could be a huge win for you in this area of fixing that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, one of the things I'm curious about is, you mentioned about, with the automating some of the billing. I wanted to talk a little bit about, we talked about some tips, we talked about automation as a whole. What are some tools that you kind of use when it came down to, hey, this has helped me automate this, and kind of also, what was the learning curve with using that tool?
Okay, so there's one in particular that I'm like really excited to talk about. And this is like specifically within our business, and it's been a reporting tool that we've used, or reporting automation software. I guess, would it be considered a software? Yes.
I don't know which one you're talking about.
You're like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Hey, so I'm excited to talk about LiveFlow, because I think LiveFlow has been a tremendous tool that we've used. When I think about, if you kind of think about like corporate, and you think about like the corporate roles, if I think about the corporate roles that I've had, when it came to doing any sort of analysis, you have what you call S-Base. It goes by different names in different companies, Hyperion, whatever. And that tool is kind of like, I guess, a data warehouse where you have data stored for, like, your clothes and basically your financials for your company. And one of the things I remember, Terrell, you and I had a conversation about, like, maybe like a couple of years ago, where I was like, you know what? It would be great if there was like a Hyperion for like small businesses. Like, that's some sort of like database where you can go in and just like pull your numbers, and they're there and they're available, and you can like do your analysis and refresh it. And then, LifeFlow came along, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, because when you think about a lot of the data, like if you think about large companies that spend millions of dollars putting together like Hyperion and that database, that data warehouse, there's so much money that goes into that investment, because it's so important and it saves so much time. Imagine if you had to pull reports every 5 minutes for month end close, if you had to go in, extract the data every time you booked entries, go in, extract the data, paste it or whatever. This tool has been amazing for us, because once an entry is made, you can just refresh it, see the updates, and it actually trumps Hyperion, because I remember when you used to do close and you had to wait 2 hours for Hyperion to refresh, right? And you wouldn't see like the stuff immediately when you would book the entries. This is very different. And so I think it just takes an analyzing to like a completely different level. And it allows you to be able to get results quickly, to where, as like our accounting team is posting entries, we can see those things right away. We can review the numbers, the balance sheet, the P&L. How does it look? We can do the review template, the dashboards, all of those things that we do. And it's because of a tool like this. So I think for me, I'd probably say that has been the best, because I've always been a fan of Hyperion, just because it makes it so easy to build like reports, and then all you have to do is refresh them, right, each month with a new data set. And having something like that for a company that is $3 to $5 million in revenue, or $10 to $12 million in revenue, and being able to do that same level of efficient analysis is definitely makes a big difference, and allows you to be able to provide that information in real time for your clients. Whereas before, it was more of, hey, let's go pull it from QuickBooks, download it, paste it in the file, run the analysis, and it just takes time, right? Versus being able to see the data in real time.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Awesome. Any other tools that you're using to or any other tool you
A really good one that is not accounting related, I guess, would be Social Pilot. So that is a tool that basically schedules the content that we post. So like this interview, the interview that we're going to be doing, the different posts that go up, like that allows you to schedule ahead in advance, to be able to basically make sure that you're planning ahead. And the great thing about that is it allows you to basically look and see, okay, over the next month, there's no limits on how far you can load your data. It basically allows you to load the videos, the copy, everything that you're going to say. and then you schedule it for whatever time you want to post and it does it. I mean, this is an absolute lifesaver because I remember when you and I first started posting content, those videos needed to be posted manually. So every day, especially when we were doing like 2 to 3 times a day, posting content 2 to 3 times a day, every day, like, okay, what's the copy? Okay, this is what we're putting in the copy. You got to come up with it on a haphazard. Okay, what's the copy? Okay, this is the video we're doing. Okay, it needs to go up. Oh my gosh, the algorithm. Okay, when are the best times to post? 7 a.m. Okay, 8 a.m. Okay, what if I have a meeting at 8 a.m.? Dang, this was not posted. I mean, there was just so much unnecessary anxiety involved around that. So that has now gone away. I can schedule exactly what time I wanted to post. I can schedule exactly what I wanted to post. And then it forces me to work ahead on like the copy, right? Like what I'm going to say, how it's going to be said, what I want to include. And that way, my stuff can post. And then you can really focus on just engaging with your audience versus being just so anxious to post. Because honestly, by the time you get there, you're probably like, I'm just done. I don't even want to look at this. Like, I'm rushing to post. Did I post before I left home? There's just so much like unnecessary stuff. So I would say that has been an amazing tool because then it even allows you to look at the calendar of your, when stuff is going up, what time it's going up. So, and the different platforms it's going on. So it's been a great tool.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I'll say, I mean, I think for me, the first one I'll say is Calendly has been a huge one for me
Mm,
because, I remember early on when we were, just trying to get the word out and even building out some of the podcasts, like we had
yep.
different guests on to where literally like I had my spreadsheet where I was tracking where I had a goal where I had to meet 70 new people every single week. And I was, on different social media platforms, reaching out to people, connecting with people, whether it was commenting on different things on, social media. And then when people are like, oh, we should, connect for a call. And when I was trying to manage all that manually, it was an absolute nightmare. Like trying to schedule, like, oh man, I was like double booking. And then when
Yeah.
I forgot exactly how I heard about, Calendly, whether it was you or someone else that told me about it. And I
It
found
was
it to
me. Give
where,
me my credit.
well,
Give me my
you
credit.
told me about it.
I still remember it was a Sunday. And I remember you were looking at your schedule and trying to figure out when to schedule like different people. And I remember you were sitting on the couch on like the blue chair. And you were just like, man, like, I wish, like, is there something where you can just like schedule it and I don't have to worry about this and people can just go schedule the time that they have and they want? And I was like, let me look. And we
Yeah.
came across Calendly.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's been a game changer
Lifesaver.
because I mean, I
Game
think when,
changer.
like I said, when I'm, talking, meeting 70 people a week and then also doing like get to knows with, let's
Mhm.
say, 15 to 25 a week. I mean, just being able to send that Calendly link out so they can register. And then we also started using it for guests for the show. Like I was looking
Mhm.
and someone was asking me about like, coming on, being a guest on our show, the Law and Finance Show. And I told him, like, right now, like, we literally have 14 interviews that are booked out for the rest of this month. And I don't necessarily have to do, as much work as I was doing before because now we have a virtual assistant where she manages that, where she's reaching out to potential guests. She shares the link with them for so they can join the Facebook group. They can schedule. And I'm no longer spending like 7 hours a week just trying to manage my own calendar with all the people I've been talking to. So that
Mhm.
one's been a huge one that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, that tool is phenomenal. Shout out to the creator of the Calendly tool. Massive,
Yes, Tope
amazing
has
accomplishment.
yeah.
And he's
Tope made
Nigerian
a
too. So
amazing tool.
shout out to
To
my
our
Nigerians. Ha ha ha.
You know, I
Doing
know
big
you
things.
mentioned it earlier, and I wanted to go back to it because I agree about live flow has been a game changer for the TL Turner Group because one of the headaches that you run into sometimes is when it comes down to reporting and trying to get the data to your clients. Like one of the
Mhm.
the phone calls you don't want to have is, hey, we missed the deadline on getting the reporting to them. So we started using live flow because we had a process for using, QuickBooks to get the bank data into QuickBooks. The bookkeeping team, they would get that done. And then when it came down to the review step, being able to create reports in, live flow to be able to quickly do the review. So then the review moved faster. And then there were clients that wanted unique setups of how they wanted to look at the data or KPIs or metrics. But with LiveFlow, we were able to automate that to where we set up like custom dashboards for different clients. And, with the push of a button, after the bookkeeping's done, then the senior accountant does the review step. We press the button, it generates the reporting that they need. And then for me, it's just sending an email to the client. Hey, your latest report is ready for your review. And here are some
Mm-hmm.
of the things that we noticed this month. And I think that made a night and day difference. And I think it also opened the door for us to introduce a new product, because then we got into doing dashboarding because we started
Yep.
learning Google Data Studios. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people started asking us about that, to where it became a new product that we could offer. And it allowed us to kind of expand our revenue for the firm, because now we offer this new tool where there are clients who love seeing the data in the dashboards, and we use LiveFlow to automate those. And then also other accounting firms started reaching out to us and like, hey, can you design a white label dashboard so they can use with their clients? And the good thing about it is we were already doing all the work in the background. It's
Exactly.
just LiveFlow became like that tool we could layer in to automate the reporting. And that feeds the different pieces that we report out to the clients. And I will say, I haven't had to get on a uncomfortable call with a client to explain why we're delayed on reporting. I haven't had to do that in like a year, which has been like
Yeah.
a huge relief for me.
Yeah, no, the dashboard, I don't think we would have had the ability to do the dashboard without LifeFlow. Like realistically, just even the amount of business to take on would have been extremely limited, because the level of data that that the dashboard, the level of value that the dashboard is offering, I can't imagine like how many reports or stuff that you would have to download, pull this from here, or how do you want to see the data, modify it, and you probably have to do that every time. And that's the amazing thing about LifeFlow is once you set it up, you set up your structure, all you got to do is refresh it. And so it just makes life so much easier. And I will tell you, like, I'm typically not a nerd. Well, maybe a little bit I am. And I accept it. But I think the dashboard you created, I swear it is like every business owner's dream. Are you going to share it with us? Super excited to see it.
So
Okay.
I'll share. I'll do a quick share. So here's a sketch of one that I did. Now, one of the things that a client was asking, they were saying is like when they get the financial statements, they would say, "Hey, they really didn't spend much time reading it, and so they preferred to have it visually." So one of the things that
Mhm.
we did is we took the live flow report, and what I did is like, hey, wrote some formulas in Google Sheets, and then figured out Google Data Studios. And so now LiveFlow automatically updates, based on what gets put in QuickBooks. And then that feeds directly into this dashboard, to where now the client is very happy, because the client is like, I can understand this. Like, this makes sense, to where the client can see the dashboard. And for me, it's a huge relief, because LiveFlow allowed us to automate this. Because before that, I was downloading reports. I got to combine this. But now, like I said, LiveFlow, it just allows us to like straight, automate that. And like I
Mhm.
said, this becomes a new service product that we offer, with some of our bookkeeping, some of our CFO advisory. And, clients are happy to pay extra to see something like this, because they're like, this helps me get the answers that I need.
Exactly. No, this is like an amazing dashboard, and I love the colors. I mean, that just adds like personality to it. So, I mean, it's been great. So like there are so many more tools out there, tools like LiveFlow and some of the other tools that we've talked about that definitely make a difference. And I would say the biggest benefit for me with LiveFlow is the opportunity to be able to offer complimentary services, the opportunity to be able to offer services that yield more revenue and eventually yield to a more profitable income statement, which is what you want, a more profitable
Yeah.
business, not just income statement, a more profitable business. So, so if you haven't been convinced, I mean, we've had a pretty good, great conversation. I mean, if you're not convinced at this point about the benefits of automation, I don't know what to tell you. Like we have shared a lot of good feedback and a lot of good advice here, and um, as you can tell, like we're pretty big fans of Live Flow, but that's a different
And
story.
one of the things that I'll also say is, like I said, there's a ton of tools that we're using, like Dubsado we're using, which has allowed us to
Literally.
automate kind of the contracting and
Mm-hmm.
automate the billing process. We said using Calendly, which allows us to automate the calendar integration. Plus, it also gives us that feature where there are some people who want to do, let's say, they're not a ongoing client where they want to do a financial kind of a forecast or build out like a basic model. Where in Calendly, we have one of our links requires, like, if you want to do that, then hey, there's a $500 charge for us to do a 2-hour working session to build your model on the spot. They go to the
Mm-hmm.
Calendly link, they pay before they set up the meeting. And then once we have the meeting, we create the tool, give them the tool. That has been a huge win using that tool. And then also the last one I want to talk about is for a lot of people that are trying to, do create content, they're trying to create podcasts. And one of the parts that is one of the most painful parts of creating content is the editing process and trying to layer in those intros, those outros, and the different clips, or just trying to have images pop up on the screen. One of the things that we switched to was using StreamYard, which is the platform we're using right
Ooh,
now.
shout out
And
to StreamYard, sponsor the podcast. Listen, we are fans. Okay. We have 7, 10, 15 podcasts, and we use all of them through StreamYard. Okay. We are loyal to StreamYard. Okay.
and like I said, when like, for those of you that saw the beginning, if you saw the intro, I mean, all of that wasn't done in post-production edits. It was done live in StreamYard. So it allows us to be able to, free up more of our time to do other things in our business, because we can automate those things we used to do in the background. And, as we said earlier, it's late. So we're going to wrap this conversation up. But
Yes.
one final treat for you to see how well the automation for StreamYard goes. So until next time.